The city lights reflected on the wet streets as rain poured down, creating a rhythm that Daniel knew all too well. He had spent years driving his taxi through these same roads, picking up passengers and dropping them off while chasing the next fare. Daniel worked long hours, often starting early and finishing late, just to make ends meet. His dream of owning his own small taxi company seemed farther away with each passing day, but he kept going, driven by hope and determination. That evening, the rain seemed heavier than usual, blurring his windshield as he drove slowly through the busy streets. Inside the cab, the faint sound of his favorite old radio station played, filling the silence. Daniel's life was simple, but tiring. He often thought about how things could change, how one big break might make all the difference. Yet, for now, every day felt the same. As he turned a corner near the park, his headlights caught sight of a woman sitting on the curb, her shoulders shaking as if she was crying. She looked soaked from the rain, her face hidden under her hands. Something about her vulnerability struck Daniel, and without thinking twice, he pulled over. "Are you all right, ma'am?" he called out gently, lowering the window. Little did Daniel know, this small act of kindness would lead to a phone call that would change his life forever. Daniel stepped out of his taxi into the pouring rain, his coat doing little to shield him from the cold. The woman on the curb flinched slightly at his approach, wiping her face with the back of her hand. "Are you okay, ma'am?" Daniel asked softly, his voice cutting through the sound of rain splattering on the pavement. She shook her head, her damp hair clinging to her cheeks. I don't know," she stammered. "I just don't know what to do." Daniel crouched down to meet her eye level. "Why don't you get in the cab? You'll catch your death out here," he said gently. She hesitated, but eventually nodded. Daniel opened the door for her, and she climbed in, clutching her purse tightly against her chest. He returned to the driver's seat and turned up the heater, letting the warmth fill the cab. "Where to?" he asked, glancing at her through the rearview mirror. She bit her lip, her voice trembling. I don't have anywhere to go right now." Daniel's hands tightened slightly on the wheel, but he kept his tone calm. "All right. How about I just drive for a bit? Maybe talking will help." For a moment, she was silent, staring out at the rain streaking the windows. Finally, she spoke. "My name is Sarah. I just lost my job today. Rent is due next week and I don't know how I'm going to make it." Daniel listened intently, nodding as she poured out her story. Her voice cracked as she described her fears and the overwhelming weight of her situation. "I've been there," Daniel said after a pause. "Life can knock you down hard sometimes, but it doesn't mean you can't get back up. You're stronger than you think." Sarah looked at him, her eyes glistening with tears. "Thank you," she whispered. They drove for a while longer, the silence between them comfortable now. When they finally pulled up to a small diner, Daniel turned to her. "How about a cup of coffee? My treat." Sarah hesitated. I don't have any money right now," she admitted. Daniel smiled. "I didn't ask for money. Consider it a little kindness between strangers." Reluctantly, she nodded, and they walked into the diner together. Over steaming cups of coffee, Sarah shared more about her life, and Daniel offered words of encouragement. By the time they left, Sarah's face was brighter, her steps lighter. Back in the cab, she reached into her purse. "Please, let me pay for the ride," she said. Daniel shook his head firmly. "No need. Save it for something more important. Just promise me one thing. When you're in a position to help someone else, you do it." Sarah's eyes welled up again, but this time with gratitude. "I will. I promise." As she stepped out of the cab, she turned back. "Thank you, Daniel. I won't forget this." Daniel watched her disappear into the night, feeling a strange sense of peace. He had no way of knowing that this small act of kindness would soon change both their lives in ways neither could have imagined. A few days had passed since that rainy night, and Daniel was back to his usual routine. The rhythm of his days remained unchanged. Early mornings, long hours driving through the city, and quiet nights. He often thought about Sarah and wondered if she was doing all right. The memory of her gratitude stayed with him, a small but comforting reminder that kindness mattered. One evening, as Daniel was cleaning his cab at the end of his shift, his phone buzzed. The number was unfamiliar, but something told him to answer. "Hello, is this Daniel?" a familiar voice asked. It was Sarah. "Yes, it is," Daniel replied, surprised but glad to hear from her. "Hi, Daniel. It's Sarah. I just wanted to thank you again for what you did the other night. I don't know how to express how much it meant to me," she said, her voice warm and sincere. "Actually, I was wondering if we could meet. I have something I'd like to discuss with you." Daniel hesitated for a moment. It wasn't every day that passengers called him back. "Of course," he said finally. "Just let me know when and where." The next afternoon, Daniel found himself sitting across from Sarah at a small cafe. She looked much more composed than when he last saw her. There was a calm confidence about her now, and she smiled warmly as she spoke. "I wanted to tell you a bit more about myself," Sarah began. "I work with a non-profit organization that focuses on helping people in need. We organize food drives, medical camps, and community outreach programs. Recently, we've been looking for reliable drivers to help with transportation for our events and deliveries. And after meeting you, I couldn't think of anyone better for the job." Daniel blinked, taken aback. "Me?" he asked, his voice laced with surprise. I'm just a taxi driver." Sarah shook her head. "You're more than that, Daniel. You're compassionate, dependable, and kind. Those are qualities we value deeply. This wouldn't be just a job. It's a chance to make a real difference in people's lives." Daniel sat back, processing her words. The idea of steady work and meaningful contribution was appealing, but doubt crept in. Could he handle the responsibility? Would he be able to adapt to something so different from his routine? "I don't know," he admitted. "I've never done anything like this before." Sarah leaned forward, her expression encouraging. "You've already proven what kind of person you are, Daniel. That night in the rain, you didn't hesitate to help a stranger. This is just an extension of that kindness. And you wouldn't be doing it alone. We'll provide all the support you need." Her words resonated with Daniel. He thought about the countless hours he spent driving aimlessly, the yearning for something more fulfilling. Maybe this was the opportunity he'd been waiting for. "All right," he said finally, a small smile breaking across his face. "I'll give it a shot." Sarah's face lit up. "That's wonderful to hear. I'll have my team contact you with the details. I think you're going to love working with us." As they finished their coffee and parted ways, Daniel felt a flicker of hope he hadn't felt in years. For the first time, it seemed like his days might hold more than just endless drives and fleeting encounters. What started as a simple act of kindness was now shaping into an opportunity that could change his life. Daniel's first day with the non-profit organization felt both exciting and nerve-wracking. The crisp morning air was filled with anticipation as he arrived at the organization's headquarters. Rows of vans lined the lot, each adorned with the non-profit's logo and slogan, "Driving change, one life at a time." Sarah greeted him warmly, handing him a folder with his schedule and a list of his first assignments. "You've got this," she said with an encouraging smile. Despite her reassurance, Daniel couldn't ignore the knots in his stomach. He had spent years navigating city streets, but this was different. Now, his passengers weren't just fares. They were people depending on him for more than a ride. His first task was to transport food supplies to a community center, hosting a free meal event for families in need. As Daniel loaded boxes into the van, an elderly volunteer approached him. "Thank you for doing this," she said. A lot of people count on these meals. You're making a real difference." Her words gave him a small but steady boost of confidence. The drive to the community center was smooth, and upon arrival, Daniel was greeted by a group of smiling children who helped unload the supplies. Their laughter and excitement were infectious, and for the first time, Daniel felt the weight of his new role begin to lift. He realized he wasn't just delivering goods. He was part of something larger, something meaningful. The following weeks brought new challenges. Daniel's schedule was packed with tasks, from driving seniors to medical appointments to delivering supplies to shelters. The demands were physically and emotionally taxing, and there were moments when he doubted whether he could keep up. One evening, after a particularly long day, he sat in his van, exhausted and questioning if he was cut out for the job. Sarah noticed his fatigue and pulled him aside the next morning. "I know this can be overwhelming at first," she said, her tone understanding. "But remember why you're here. Every trip you make is changing someone's life. And don't forget, you're not alone. We're all in this together." Her words stuck with him. Gradually, Daniel began to find his rhythm. He learned to manage his time more effectively and built connections with the people he helped. One day, a senior woman he had driven to her doctor's appointment handed him a small, hand-knitted scarf. "Just a little thank you for everything you do," she said, her eyes brimming with gratitude. Moments like these reminded Daniel why he had taken the leap. As the months went by, Daniel started to see the ripple effect of his work. At a community event, a young boy ran up to him and handed him a crayon drawing of a van with a stick figure waving from the window. "That's you!" the boy exclaimed. Daniel couldn't help but laugh, touched by the gesture. His confidence grew with each passing day. The organization recognized his dedication, and Sarah often commended him during team meetings. "Daniel, you've become an integral part of what we do here," she said during one meeting. "Your kindness and hard work inspire all of us." Daniel's transformation was evident, not just in his work, but in his outlook on life. He no longer saw himself as just a taxi driver. He was a key player in a mission to bring hope and help to those in need. The sense of purpose he'd longed for was finally within his grasp. One evening, as he drove back to headquarters after completing his last task, Daniel reflected on how far he'd come. The man who had once felt trapped in the monotony of his days was now thriving, fueled by the connections he had made and the lives he had touched. His journey was far from over, but for the first time, he felt truly proud of the path he was on. The evening of the charity gala was nothing like anything Daniel had ever experienced. The venue was elegantly decorated with twinkling lights and tables adorned with white linens and fresh flowers. Guests in formal attire filled the room, their laughter and conversations creating a warm, buzzing atmosphere. Daniel stood near the entrance, feeling slightly out of place in his modest suit. Sarah appeared by his side, her encouraging smile easing his nerves. "You've earned this moment," she said softly, leading him toward the stage. The event was a celebration of the organization's achievements, and, as the program progressed, Daniel's name was called. Applause filled the room as he hesitantly made his way to the stage. Standing behind the podium, he looked out at the crowd, his hands gripping the edges to steady himself. Sarah stepped forward to speak, her voice filled with emotion. "I want to share the story of a man whose kindness not only changed my life, but also created a ripple effect of compassion. A few months ago, I was at one of the lowest points in my life. Daniel's simple act of offering help when I needed it most reminded me of the power of kindness. Because of him, I found the strength to move forward and create new opportunities for others." Her words resonated deeply with the audience, and Daniel's heart swelled with a mix of pride and humility. Sarah turned to him, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Daniel's dedication to helping others has been an inspiration to all of us. It is my honor to present him with this award." recognizing his incredible contributions to our community. The room erupted in applause as Sarah handed Daniel a beautifully engraved plaque. He stared at it for a moment, his emotions threatening to overwhelm him. Taking a deep breath, he stepped forward to speak. "I never thought I'd be standing here," Daniel began, his voice steady but full of emotion. "A few months ago, I was just a taxi driver trying to get through each day. I didn't expect that stopping to help someone would lead to all of this. But it taught me something important. Kindness is never wasted. Even the smallest act can grow into something much bigger than you ever imagined." He paused, his eyes scanning the room. "I'm grateful to Sarah for giving me this opportunity, and to everyone here who has supported me. This journey has shown me that when we come together to help each other, we can create real change." As he stepped down from the stage, the applause was deafening. Guests approached him throughout the evening, sharing their own stories of how his work had impacted their lives. The recognition and gratitude he received were overwhelming but heartwarming. Later that night, as Daniel stood outside the venue, gazing at the city lights, Sarah joined him. "You deserve every bit of this," she said, her tone filled with pride. Daniel smiled, his voice thoughtful. "I didn't realize how much one small decision could change everything. This isn't just about me. It's about everyone who believed in me and gave me the chance to make a difference." As they stood there, Daniel felt an undeniable sense of fulfillment. The man who once saw himself as just a taxi driver now understood the profound impact of his actions. His life had come full circle, and he was ready to embrace whatever lay ahead, knowing that kindness truly had the power to transform lives. Months after the charity gala, Daniel's life had transformed in ways he never imagined. His days were now filled with purpose and fulfillment as he continued working with the non-profit organization. The same man who once doubted his worth now found joy in making a difference, one ride at a time. Sitting in his van during a quiet moment, Daniel often reflected on that rainy night when he first met Sarah. Helping her had seemed like a small act at the time, but it had set off a chain reaction that changed everything. Through his work, he'd become a symbol of compassion in the community, inspiring others to lend a hand wherever they could. Determined to pay forward the kindness he'd received, Daniel started mentoring young drivers. He shared his story with them, emphasizing the importance of empathy and perseverance. "You never know whose life you might change," he would say, his words carrying the weight of his experiences. The ripple effect of his actions was evident. Families he'd helped began volunteering with the nonprofit. Neighbors started organizing community support initiatives, and young drivers found hope in his mentorship. Daniel's journey had shown that even the smallest gestures could create waves of change. As he watched a new volunteer load supplies into a van, Daniel felt a deep sense of gratitude. His act of kindness had not only transformed his life, but had inspired an entire community to embrace the power of compassion. Thank you for watching Daniel's inspiring journey. This story is a powerful reminder of how even the smallest acts of kindness can lead to life-changing moments, not only for those we help, but for ourselves as well. Have you ever experienced a moment where helping someone changed your life? Perhaps it was offering support to a stranger, or being there for a loved one during a difficult time. We would love to hear your stories. Share them in the comments below, and inspire others to spread kindness. Remember, acts of compassion don't have to be grand to make a difference. A simple smile, a kind word, or lending a helping hand can ripple out and create profound changes in ways we might never anticipate. If this story resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more uplifting tales of hope and humanity. Don't forget to share this video with friends and family. You never know who might need a reminder of the power of kindness today. Let's continue to build a world where compassion drives change. Thank you for being part of this journey. See you in the next story.